Oh! Oh, that was fun.
Oh, you son of a bitch.
You know, I knew as soon as you picked Washington to go past the second round, I had this in the bag. Except I didn't know I was actually going to win this in the first round.
Damn it. This has just not been my year. Alright, let's get this one over with. Well, it was another year of surprises in the Stanley Cup Playoffs, and again, the Penguins finished on top. But before we start recapping the finals, let's talk about rounds 1 through 3. Overtime was the name of the game in these rounds, as the 18 overtime games we saw in round 1 alone set a new league record. Additionally, 50 of the 81 games played in these first 3 rounds were decided by only 1 goal. The Ottawa-Boston and Washington-Toronto series were 2 that really could have gone either way, as every game between these teams was decided by only 1 goal. But the biggest shocker came in round 1 when Nashville swept Chicago, a team that 85% of NHL analysts picked to come out of the West. Then over in the East, the Rangers surprised quite a few people with an upset win over the Canadiens. What did you think of the first 3 rounds, PK?
Well, let's see. You did mention the overtimes. There was an unusual amount. And the comeback games. And the back and forth rounds. And even the blowouts. We had more blowouts this year than I have seen since the Canucks were in the race while Luongo was still on the team. I have to agree though. Nashville taking out Chicago and then making it to the finals, I was cheering for them as soon as they were taking on the Ducks. They have been fighting to make it to the finals, and they deserve to go to the Grand Ball. And good for them for doing so. How did you feel about Montreal being knocked out in the first round as well?
I know I wasn't the only one surprised by that. I mean, on paper, Montreal was playing better heading into the playoffs, and head-to-head with the Rangers this year, they hadn't lost. But in this series, Henrik Lundqvist stepped up for the Rangers and shut down Montreal's top scorers. Unfortunately, something Carey Price wasn't able to do at the other end. Now, moving on to the comebacks you mentioned, this was a good year for those, with tying goals scored in the last 5 minutes of the third period in 11 games through the first 3 rounds. There was Ottawa's 2 goals against New York in the final 5 minutes of Game 2 of their second round series that tied things up before Ottawa completed the comeback with a double overtime goal. But by far the most impressive was Anaheim's 3 goals in the final 3 minutes and 16 seconds against Edmonton in Game 5 of their series. Again, another one where the comeback was completed in double overtime. I should put it on my board of playoff lessons not to count a team out too soon. There we go.
Never ever count a team out. The NHL playoffs have never been boring to say the least. I mean, even with the fans that hate Pittsburgh going off on how the refs were on their side. Well, honestly, I do wonder what happened if some of the actual botched calls were made properly. Would we have had a new champion and not a repeat champion?
That is a difficult hypothetical to answer, because though many would like to think that had a particular call gone the other way, or that a non-call had been called, a game or even a series might have turned out differently. But many times you don't know how one play or another will impact the final result. That being said, let's move on to the Cup Finals, where there were a couple plays that could have you asking those questions. The first goal Nashville scored in Game 1 that was called back as being offside on a coach's challenge which would have given the Predators a 1-0 lead, and the quick whistle early in the second period of Game 6 that negated another goal that would have given Nashville a 1-0 lead. What did you think about those calls? And given how close these two games were, do you think these calls made a difference?
I think it could have. And people are saying that Game 6 could have gone to overtime. That being said, I'm not sure if I actually like the outcome of the finals. I mean, I was pulling for the underdog that actually made it to the finals. I would have loved to see a Cinderella story. And at least this year, we didn't hear of any teams not letting the other team's fans into their buildings during the playoffs.
Very true. And it would have been cool to see Nashville pull off the Cinderella run like LA did in 2012. But we still got to see a new club make it to the finals. And the Penguins rookie Jake Gensel not only led the league in postseason goals, but also tied the record for postseason points by a rookie. Kind of makes you wonder why he or Malkin, who was second in goals and led the league in points, didn't get the Conn Smythe this year, huh?
Uh-oh. Here we go with the trophies. I'm not getting into that argument with you again. I learned that lesson last year. And besides, it's a whole new ballgame when you're talking about the trophies. However, I gotta know, were you happy that Pittsburgh won the cup?
If I'm being honest, then the answer is no. The reason being, though, is that after they win, it seems a majority of the talk in the media is less about the Penguins as a team and more about Crosby as an individual, even if he wasn't the best performer for his team. I know that people will always gush about the big-name player, but at the end of the day, it is still a team sport, and this was a team's accomplishment.
It really was the team's accomplishment, and they had this issue last year too, as we've mentioned. And honestly, there are so many other players that are on the team that it isn't just about Crosby. The only time I like Crosby is when he's in the Tim Hortons commercials up here helping out kids. And even then, they're probably paying him an arm and a leg just to get him on a 30-second spot. I think that's what spoiled the playoffs for me the most, was the fact that Pittsburgh was not Pittsburgh. It was the Crosby Show with friends on the TV. And even with Nashville in the finals, I didn't want to watch it because Pittsburgh was in there. And it just felt boring. To see a team that appears almost every announcer is just in love with them and have almost a biased announcing. The officiating seemed to follow the same. And as much as I wanted Nashville to get the cup, I couldn't bring myself to watch it. I know I'm going to get hate for this, but it really felt that way whenever I watched a game with Pittsburgh in it. However, I am glad there wasn't as many injuries this year as there was for previous years.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it's been a long road, but now that the season is over, everyone's attention is going to focus on the wheeling and dealing that's going to happen this offseason, especially with the new Vegas team. So it'll be interesting to see how things will shift in the league.
I'm looking forward to seeing how the uneven teams are going to play out. And I mean, I would love to see how well Vegas is going to do in their inaugural year. And their jerseys, they're pretty damn sweet too. However, I'm going to enjoy having the cup back at my house with some sweet, sweet victory beers. And you, sir, are going to sit there and watch it because you can't turn off your TV.
Oh, hell no. Let's just get this over with. Well, that's another year in the books. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys again next season. Now, I have to watch this.
Cheers, everyone. Thanks for a great year. Oh, and man behind the mask, you may want to grab your own beer. I'll be a while drinking these. Oh, Wait, you can't. I've locked you in. Cheers.